Hey guys, so we're now looking at Delphy and Leonard, a very easy study to be able to use. One I'd really recommend you brush up on if you aren't too familiar at this point. So just making our way through, we can see they are feminists. Okay, so definitely worth noting. Okay, so if you're ever in a 12 mark essay where it requires a feminist perspective on the family, then Delphy and Leonard, or maybe even Oakley, is a good way to go. But I'd say that these guys are pretty good. Worth noting at this point that it is a 1992 study, so we'll come back to that a little bit later on, but it's not that old, not compared to some of the other ones that we've looked at, like Parsons or even Zaretsky. So a little bit more modern, but still maybe on the old side. So they're all about work. Okay, Delphi and Leonard. They focus on it, and they say that basically, rather than the bourgeoisie oppressing everyone, like Zaretsky says, it's more men. Okay, it's men who are becoming the main beneficiaries of women's labour. So beneficiaries, basically people who benefit from women's labour. And when they're referring to women's labour, they are of course referring to paid work, domestic work, and the emotional work. So thus making the triple shift. Okay, hopefully you're familiar with that key term. So the triple shift, where they're conducting all those three types of work. Okay, so that is on the face of it exploitation. Okay, so they believe that the family has a central role in maintaining patriarchy. So again, patriarchy, that whole idea of a male-dominated society. And basically, all they really talk about is the fact that men are the ones who are benefiting from women's extra work. Okay, they acknowledge the fact that in modern day society, remember 1990s. Okay, they acknowledge that women are out there doing paid work. Okay, they acknowledge that they're not seeing them as sort of these 1950s housewives anymore. They're seeing them as these workers who go out and work just like men do. Okay, so they're acknowledging that, but they are saying that even though they're doing that, men are still benefiting from their labor because they're still having to do that domestic work. Okay, it's not as easy as it's simply going out to work and coming home and it's all relaxed and happy for you, like Parsons said it was. Okay, it's more the fact that they are coming home and still having to do the washing up, the ironing, the cooking, the cleaning, all those sorts of things on top of everything else. Okay, so it's not equally shared anymore. So that's the summary right there. You can pause the video and have a quick look at my wording of it if you'd like. But I've just been over it, so hopefully you don't need that. So let's just look at the positives about this. So I've already mentioned a couple of these. So it acknowledges the role of women in most families and notes the injustice of the expectations surrounding domestic work and women. I've already been over that. So basically it acknowledges the fact that women are now working. Okay, so most feminists don't necessarily directly acknowledge that. Okay, Delphy and Leonard do, so that's a good thing. It has been proven. I mean, if we really look at it, if we look at a regular family in modern day society, let alone the late 90s, it is clear that women do still take a vast majority of the household tasks, and they do them. Okay, so that is still normal, whether they're in a nuclear family or not. Okay, so that's still relevant. It was conducted in the 90s, which it's a lot more modern, as I've already said. Okay, so it could still be considered applicable to modern society. And then finally, as always with feminists, okay, they are very gender deterministic. Okay, and what that means is they don't take into account things like social class and ethnicity. Okay, they don't take into account other forms of oppression that could be going on within the family. They literally only look at gender. Okay, then equally, although it's a modern theory, they don't take into account the fact that that men actually are increasingly taking an interest and taking undertaking domestic work. Okay, they're taking on that in addition to their paid work, so that's increasingly normal. Okay, and equally, they don't acknowledge the fact that same-sex families and single-parent families, or lone parent families, as I should say, are on the rise as well. Okay, so they don't take any of that into account. So that's something that we can definitely use to criticize them. But overall, good study. Okay, good one to remember. Make sure you try and use it in a 12 marker next time you do one. Cheers, guys.